If you've ever heard that the CRA will take half your RRSP when you die, you've heard a number that's real, but also incomplete: $50,000 in tax on every $100,000. That's the version people pass around, and it's scary enough that most people freeze and do nothing. But here's what that number is missing. The 53% top rate in Ontario only applies to income above $258,482. Because Canada uses progressive tax brackets, the first chunk of your RRSP in your final return is taxed at zero, the next chunk at a lower rate, and only the portion that crosses the top threshold gets hit at 53%. For a smaller RRSP, the effective tax rate at death can land in the range of 25% to 30%. For a $400,000 RRSP, where more of the balance falls into higher brackets, that rate climbs to roughly 42%. Still far short of the fear headline, but still a very large number. On $400,000, that's around $168,000, your family could lose if there's no plan. The biggest mistake isn't misunderstanding the rate. The biggest mistake is that the standard advice people follow to avoid this problem can actually make things worse, not better. I'm going to show you why. And then I'm going to show you the one move that genuinely changes the outcome, especially if you're single. If you're 55 or older and you've spent years building an RRSP, this channel is exactly for you. Hit subscribe, because what I'm about to walk through will directly affect how much you leave behind. Here's the number that changes everything: Ontario's 2026 tax brackets. On the first roughly $15,000 of RRSP income in your final return, you pay zero. That's the basic personal amount, federal and provincial combined. On income from there up to around $53,891, the combined rate is roughly 19%, and the 53% top rate only applies to income above $258,482. So if your RRSP is $400,000, which is a reasonable number for a Canadian in their early 60s who had a decent career, the effective tax rate on a full withdrawal in the year of death works out to roughly 42%. Not 50%, but it's still not far off. That's around $168,000 in tax on a $400,000 balance. A very large number. And it comes off the top of what you leave behind. The first trap is this: the fear of losing half makes people do nothing. And doing nothing is often worse than a planned approach. Here's the mechanism behind it. When you die, your RRSP is treated as fully taxable income on your final tax return. This is called deemed disposition. The government assumes you cashed it all out on the day you died. The entire balance gets stacked on top of any other income you earned that year, and it's taxed as regular income in your estate. There are no special rates, no discount, no exemption. It comes straight off the top. The only real exception is if you have a spouse or a financially dependent child or grandchild. In that case, your RRSP can roll over to them tax-free. That's the spousal rollover, and it's a legitimate strategy. But if you're single, divorced, or widowed, no rollover exists. The full tax lands on your estate. This is the part that gets quietly ignored by most retirement advice. The default plan assumes you have a spouse. If you don't, you've essentially been left out of the standard solution. And nobody in the mainstream conversation tells you that directly. What most people do when they hear this is one of two things. They either panic and start pulling money out of their RRSP early, trying to reduce the balance before they die, or they do nothing, tell themselves they'll deal with it later, and hope the problem goes away. Both of those responses have real costs, and the early withdrawal one is actually the trap most people fall into without realizing it. That 42% effective tax is still a massive number, and the common advice says, melt down your RRSP before you hit 71. Start withdrawing early, pay the tax now, avoid the bigger bill later. It sounds sensible, until you see what it costs you in lost growth over 10 or 15 years. That's where this gets more complicated. You've probably heard the meltdown strategy. Pull money out of your RRSP early, pay the tax now, and shrink the balance before you die so the final tax hit isn't as big. It sounds logical. The fear of a future tax bill feels so immediate that acting today seems like the right move. But there's a bias running underneath that logic called loss aversion. The pain of a future tax hit feels larger than it actually is. So we do something now to reduce that feeling, even when the math says waiting was the better choice. Let me show you with a simple example. Say you withdraw $10,000 from your RRSP today. At a 30% marginal rate, you pay $3,000 in tax and walk away with $7,000 in your pocket. But what if you'd left that $10,000 invested inside your RRSP for another 10 years at 6% annual return, a conservative estimate for a balanced Canadian portfolio? In 10 years, $10,000 grows to $17,908. If you withdraw it at age 75 in a lower tax bracket, say 25%, you pay $4,477 in tax and keep $13,431. Withdraw today $7,000. Wait $13,431. The early withdrawal cost you $6,431, almost as much as the original amount you were trying to protect. I used to lean toward early withdrawals for clients who were nervous about the tax bill. Then I sat with someone who had taken $50,000 out at 55. By the time we looked at the numbers together, the lost growth over 12 years was close to $30,000. That wasn't a small miscalculation. That was a meaningful, permanent hit to what they could leave behind. The real question isn't whether you should melt down your RRSP. It's at what tax bracket it makes sense to withdraw versus leave it growing. For most Canadians near or in their 60s, if your marginal rate today is higher than what you expect in retirement, withdrawing early costs you more than waiting. For most people past their peak earning years, keeping money inside the RRSP is the better bet, unless you have a specific reason to withdraw now, like managing OAS clawback. The fragility path looks like this. You withdraw early, you lose years of compound growth, you run out of money sooner, and you end up more dependent on CPP and OAS than you planned. The resilience path is the opposite. Keep the RRSP growing, withdraw strategically in lower tax years after 71, and give yourself more flexibility as you go. But here's where this gets personal. Everything I've said about the meltdown trap, the spousal rollover, the standard solutions, none of it helps if you're single. If there's no spouse to roll your RRSP to, the whole equation changes. And that's the problem most retirement content doesn't want to address directly. If you're single, whether that's divorced, widowed, or never married, you've probably noticed that almost every retirement video assumes you have a partner. The spousal RRSP rollover is the go-to solution for couples, and it genuinely works well, but you have no one to roll over to. So where does that leave you? In most retirement content, it leaves you with a shrug and a vague suggestion to talk to an advisor. There's a real framework that works specifically for single Canadians, and it's built from two pieces most people don't think to combine. I call it the SHIELD plan. Step 1. Use a term life insurance policy to cover the tax bill exactly. Step 2. Use a charitable donation strategy to eliminate what's left. Here's how Step 1 works. If your RRSP is $400,000 and your effective tax rate at death is around 42%, the estimated tax bill is roughly $168,000. You take out a 20-year term life insurance policy with a face value matching that estimate. For a 60-year-old non-smoker in Canada, the monthly premium for that size of policy typically runs somewhere between $100 and $150 a month, based on current rates from providers like Sun Life. When you die, the policy pays out to your named beneficiary, tax-free. That check covers the CRA bill. You don't need permanent or whole life insurance for this. Term is enough because by the time you're in your 80s, your RRSP will likely have been drawn down significantly anyway. Step 2 is the charitable donation strategy. In Canada, you can designate a registered charity as the beneficiary of your RRSP, either in full or in part. When you do this, your estate receives a charitable donation tax credit. In Ontario, the combined federal and provincial credit on amounts over $200 is roughly 40% and can run higher, depending on your income level in that final year. If you donate $100,000 of your RRSP to a charity, that credit can offset a meaningful portion of the tax owed on the rest of the balance. Now put both pieces together. Leave your $400,000 RRSP to a charity. The donation tax credit offsets a large share of the tax. Meanwhile, the life insurance payout goes directly to your kids or whoever you've named, completely tax-free. Your estate pays significantly less tax, your chosen people get the money, and a cause you believe in gets a meaningful gift. If you're not interested in charity, you don't need step 2. The life insurance alone ensures that the after-tax value of your RRSP is fully protected. You're buying certainty with a known monthly cost instead of leaving it as an unknown tax liability. I don't know every detail of your situation. Maybe you have strong reasons not to leave anything to charity, or maybe your RRSP balance is very different from these numbers. That's fine. This framework is about giving you real choices instead of the default, which is no plan at all. And no plan is always the most expensive option. I can already hear the objection. Life insurance premiums are money leaving your pocket every month. Fair point. Let me show you why that comparison looks different once you run it against what you're currently set to pay. The most common reaction I hear from people over 60 when this topic comes up is, "I'll be dead. I won't care. The government can have it." And I understand it. You've spent decades working, saving, worrying about money. You're tired. The idea of setting up one more thing, understanding one more rule, talking to one more advisor, it genuinely feels like too much. But there's a specific bias at work called temporal discounting. We discount future pain because it's abstract, it hasn't happened yet. It's a future version of us that doesn't feel real right now. And when the pain falls on other people, your kids, your sibling, a charity you care about, it gets discounted even further because we unconsciously treat other people's losses as less urgent than our own. You're not lazy, you're exhausted by complexity. The retirement system is genuinely complicated, and most of the resources available to you are built by people who benefit from that complexity. Feeling overwhelmed is the rational response to an irrational system. But here's a way to reframe it. The tax bill is a cost of the system. You don't control it. The insurance premium is a cost you choose. Would you rather pay $100 to $150 a month to an insurance company and know your beneficiaries get a tax-free payout? Or pay nothing now and leave potentially $168,000 of your hard-earned savings for the CRA to collect instead? The math is simple. The barrier isn't the numbers, it's the feeling. It's the mental weight of planning for something that happens after you're gone. Let yourself feel what it means to leave your people in a better position because of something you chose to do. That's the whole point of building wealth in the first place. Now let me walk you through 3 steps to put this in motion. No jargon, just the actions that matter. 3 steps. That's all this takes to get from no plan to protected. Step 1. Estimate your RRSP tax exposure. For a rough working number in Ontario, if your RRSP is your primary asset, multiply your balance by about 0.40 to 0.42. If your RRSP is $400,000, that's somewhere in the range of $160,000 to $168,000. Write that number down, that's what you're protecting against. Step 2. Get a term life insurance quote for that amount. You're looking for a 20-year term policy with a face value close to your tax estimate. When you set up the policy, name your beneficiary directly: a child, a sibling, a trusted person, not your estate. A direct beneficiary bypasses probate and gets the money faster. Comparison sites can show you quotes from multiple insurers at once, which is the easiest way to benchmark current rates. Step 3. Review your RRSP beneficiary designations. If you want to use the charitable donation strategy, you can name a registered charity as beneficiary of your RRSP, fully or partially. If you want all of it going to family, keep a person as beneficiary, but pair it with the life insurance policy. If you're considering a split, talk to a tax professional or estate lawyer. This step benefits from an expert's eyes, especially on the final tax return. I know what you're thinking. I still need a will. I still need to deal with the final return. Yes, but this plan gets you 90% of the protection. You don't need a $5,000 estate plan to save $160,000 or more. One policy, one beneficiary review, one conversation, around $100 to $150 a month. That's the ballpark cost of protecting the entire legacy. Compare that to a tax bill in the $160,000 range. The math is not close. To close the loop, the RRSP tax at death is real, but it's driven by your specific balance and bracket, not a flat 50%. For most Canadians with a $400,000 RRSP, the effective rate lands somewhere around 40% to 42%, and for smaller balances, it's lower. The early meltdown strategy can cost you more in lost growth than the tax you're trying to avoid. And if you're single, the spousal rollover isn't an option, but a term life insurance policy combined with a charitable donation strategy can bring the tax hit close to zero. I don't believe in scaring you into action. I believe in giving you the actual numbers so you can decide for yourself. If you're 55 or older and you want to stop guessing about your retirement tax bill, hit subscribe. This channel is built for you.